There we go. Again, thank you everyone for coming. There is 2 documents in the chat, the agenda and also a list of pre-submitted questions. We have 2 presenters here today. So our first presenter will be Justin from Maple Leaf Academy, and then we'll have Carrie from TIES joining us today. So really big thank you. I appreciate your time. You're joining us today and all the correspondence we sent back and forth as well. I think everyone's really excited to hear more about HyFlex in your context and also in general. And I just really appreciate having you here today. So we are going to start with Maple Leaf Academy. So I'll hand it over to them, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. I'm just going to share my screen. Have my PowerPoint presentation here. Okay, so the HyFlex program at Maple Leaf Academy. So first, I actually, we've been calling it a hybrid program for about 1.5 years. But with Daniel's email, I actually had to look up the meaning of HyFlex, and it's kind of funny. I'm not sure how many people can relate to that or not, but HyFlex is the correct term. After looking it up, we realized that that really is what we're doing. So hybrid is, just from what I could find online, is generally less flexible. So it would require students a certain amount of online and in-person time, and most likely less synchronous class time. HyFlex is a more flexible version of hybrid. And so just to clarify what we do at Maple Leaf Academy, which you can, I use MLA as a short form. The students have the option of attending classes only in person or only through Zoom, or a combination of both. And it's really up to them where they are at any given class. And so the teacher, of course, has to be prepared for a variation in class size in person. I do teach in the HyFlex program here at Maple Leaf Academy. And so I just make sure that I have, a few extra paper copies for in-person students. And but it's usually, it doesn't change a whole lot throughout the semester in terms of who's coming in person. And then our students have homework assignments that they do outside of class time, of course. And we use online platforms like ESL Library, Avenue, just as a few examples. So just a quick intro in terms of how things work at Maple Leaf Academy. We don't have just the one teacher per class. We have about 4 or 5 teachers per class. And so that does throw in a variation in our HyFlex program. So we would sometimes have maybe 2 teachers that are teaching in person, and then 2 that are teaching online through Zoom. And so that's the one thing that maybe would be different in your programs. And I guess there are some challenges and benefits to the way we do things here. The benefit would be that it's maybe a less of a burden in terms of the teacher wouldn't have to spend all day in a HyFlex class. However, now that I've adapted to the HyFlex program, it really doesn't feel like a burden. It just feels like routine at this point. And I'll get into that a bit later. In terms of the setup, I just have here on the left some of the general technological devices that you'll need for the HyFlex class. A smartboard, a laptop in the class, a good microphone, and you want to make sure it's a good one. A microphone may have difficulty picking up students' voices, especially if they have like a softer voice, if they're sitting further from the microphone. A wide angle webcam, meaning that it can pick up a wider angle. It's takes in the whole class essentially. And our webcam is a 1080p, which means HD. So we do recommend having sort of a high definition webcam. USB power hub. And I have some pictures of those individual devices in my later slides. Speakers, we do recommend them. It's not absolutely necessary. I mean, a lot of smart boards have pretty decent speakers, but we do have speakers, as you can see there in the photo. And if possible, a computer lab is a great addition, or a great, it's a great thing to have when you want your students to all have access to a computer, both in person and online. For example, if you're doing a listening activity where you want them all to listen at individual times. And we use Zoom. We use Zoom for all of our classes. So I just have labeled the devices in the picture. Just to give you an idea of where they're located. The webcam is on top of the smartboard. That's generally where we place it. It just gives the students a nice view of the class, and they can see the teacher as well, unless the teacher walks too far to the left or right. And then the teacher can face the webcam. We've also had the webcam facing the teacher at times. So if we were to do that in this particular class, we'd have to have something that it's sitting on. For example, we've had presenters come into the class and do presentations. And so there have been times where we've had the webcam facing the smartboard or facing the presenter. But generally that's where it stays, is on top of the smartboard facing the class. And then that way the students online can see the students, and it just can help them feel more connected to the class. Just another picture, another angle of the same class. And then I'll kind of get some individual photos here. So here's our microphone. I put the cost at about 150, but really it depends. That's just a very rough estimate. You're going to find webcams that are, sorry, you're going to find microphones that are more expensive than that and cheaper than that. I'm actually not totally sure how much our microphone costs. That was just a quick Amazon search, but that kind of gives you an idea of the price range that you'd be looking at for a decent microphone. This is the USB power hub, and as I've written here on the left, it just helps take some of the stress off of the laptop, because the mic and the webcam take a fair bit of power. And so having that USB power hub is really going to lessen the strain and the power drain on the laptop. And again, I'm not exactly sure on how much we spent on this, but if you Google it or if you look on Amazon, it's about $30 for a decent power hub. And then again, the wide angle webcam, 1080p. Again, I'm not exactly sure on the cost that we incurred, but it's approximately $150 for a decent wide angle webcam. Okay. Here's just another setup of a HyFlex class. The difference here is that the laptop is on a desk and the teacher would be sitting at that chair for a lot of the class. And this is a situation where generally we would have the webcam facing the teacher. And so if you would want the students online to see the class, you'd have to flip the webcam around, and then the teacher would maybe walk up the aisles. So I've done that. I've actually taught in this particular class before, and generally I have the webcam on top of the laptop there. But then there have been times where I would get up and walk around through the class, and so I would flip the webcam around. Or you can put it on top of the smartboard as well. But as you could probably figure out, it takes a fair bit of self-awareness as a teacher when you're teaching the HyFlex class, just to kind of be aware of how much you're balancing your time with the in-class students versus the online, and kind of just self-aware in terms of where am I right now and who can see me, and yeah, I'll explain that a bit more later. As I said earlier, it's a great idea if you are able to have access to a computer lab. This is a pre-COVID photo here, but it works in a very similar manner now, just less students in the class and of course with masks on. But they would be sitting in a room just like this, and we'd have our teacher at the smartboard with the webcam. And then this is a great way, it just gives the teachers a lot of options. You know, they can teach their HyFlex class as they usually would, but then when they have their assignments that are online, for example, a listening activity or something on an online platform, then they have that option to just get everybody, both in person and online, everybody just do this exercise right now. And so this has worked very well for us. We do have a lab schedule for the computer lab, so teachers do have to schedule their time for this lab. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on just how we decided it. I do feel that it's going to be different in a lot of other programs, but in terms of how we decided who would be in the class, we did look at if they were literacy or like a lower level of English, they had priority. So yeah, I think all of our literacy classes are in a HyFlex class. We don't have any literacy classes that are strictly online through Zoom. We also looked at the students' ability to handle technology. So if we were noticing that a class, if the students just generally had more of a difficult time with technology, then we tried to prioritize that class in becoming a HyFlex class. We don't have, like, we do have, I would say, a third of our classes are HyFlex classes. And so the rest of them are just through Zoom, strictly online. And then if the students were elderly or vulnerable, in terms of vulnerable to COVID-19, that was another factor. So of course, if they were elderly or vulnerable, then the HyFlex probably was not something that we did with those students, that we just kept them online through Zoom. And I guess the fourth point there is just if the teachers were willing to come into the school or not, we had to consider that too, because we weren't going to force anybody to come into the school. And if all 4 teachers in the class were just not comfortable teaching at the school, then of course it didn't make sense to make that class a HyFlex class. All right. A timeline. We started our HyFlex program pretty early on, pretty much right after COVID, after the COVID restrictions were implemented. So back in March, or actually April of 2020 is when we were, you know, I guess like a lot of other people, we were scrambling to adapt to the online environment. And so we started developing the HyFlex program at that time. Our first class was in July of 2020. And then it expanded to the CLB2, CLB3 literacy classes. I should say our first class in the HyFlex program was not a link class. It was a provincially funded class, but our link classes followed soon after. And today it's going well. Everything's running well, and teachers have adapted to the learning curve. And I think we're very proud and very happy with our HyFlex program. I just have a little animation here, which I'll just skip through. All right, so how does it work? Well, we first have to determine which classes are HyFlex, and we base it on the factors that I had mentioned before, like, are they literacy? Are they lower level? How do they handle technology? We assign students a desk, so they stay in that same desk for the semester. They can't really move around. Of course, the teacher has to make sure that they have prepared both digital and physical copies of their class material, and that does take more prep time. And we've done our best to support teachers with that extra work. Again, as a teacher myself, I've gone through that process, and in the beginning, it's a little bit of a learning curve, just in terms of making sure that you have both the physical and the digital versions of your class material. But once you get established, and I'm at a point now where I've gone through a couple semesters of that, it's it does. I mean, it's still a little bit more work than like a strictly in-person class, but it's definitely not significant at this point, just because all my class materials have been developed already, and it's just a routine that I go through now. We do maintain an online e-portfolio for all students, and we use Avenue as our e-portfolio platform. And this is for both in-person and online. So we just make sure that every student has an e-portfolio, because if they move to another SPO, then we want to make sure that if, for example, if the next class that they're going to at a different school is only online or only through Zoom, then they have their portfolio that their new teacher can look at. Conducting a class and keeping students engaged. I know that was one of the questions that was asked, is in terms of the pre-submitted questions for this meeting today. How do you keep students engaged? How do you keep them engaged online? How do you keep them engaged in person? I mean, a big skill that a teacher needs to have is self-awareness. Certainly, I think that a lot of ESL teachers or LINC teachers already have that skill, simply because you do have to be mindful of how you're phrasing things and how fast you're speaking. But it just takes a little bit more self-awareness than usual, because you have to be mindful of the two dynamics in your class, and just making sure that you're involving everybody so nobody feels neglected. I do my best to call on students in terms of having them read materials, or if there's questions, sometimes I'll ask an individual student to answer, and that goes for online and in person. I use screen sharing, of course, so that way the students online can see what's on the smartboard. In terms of getting students to attend in person, I know that was another question that was asked. I just try to make it fun in the class. I think that one thing that makes students want to come out is that that friendship and that in-person interaction that you just can't fully experience online. At least that's how I feel. And so, of course, when you have students that are friends and they're attending in person, it really helps to make that environment a fun place that people want to come to. And then also ensuring them that we do follow the COVID-19 protocols that have been recommended by the government and that are being followed by schools in general. And I think I have another point here. I'm just looking. Yeah, those are basically the techniques that we use. In terms of literacy students and how to accommodate them, I have taught literacy as well. And what I have found effective is really taking the time to involve every single student in that class. And of course, literacy classes should be smaller anyways. And so, if we're going over phrases, maybe there's some phrases that I'm teaching them in terms of a speaking exercise, I'll have each student repeat that, make sure everyone's listening carefully. If there's writing that I'm correcting, then I like to, with their permission, show their writing on the smartboard and everyone can see it. And then we can kind of go over it together and see what are some of their mistakes. And Um, Keeping teacher talking time to a minimum. That is another thing that I have found helpful and effective in teaching the literacy students. Just gonna take a look at my time here. Okay. Another thing that's very important is that you need to make sure your in-person students, when they talk, they have to talk with a clear, strong voice. I found that a lot of my students, or at least some of them, they tend to have this softer voice, and I'm not sure if they're shy or what it is, but we've had some difficulty with students online hearing what students in the class are saying. But you know, we do have a good microphone that does pick up a lot of sound, and it does have a pretty good range. And I've tested it myself. I've gone at the back of the class and talked normally, and students can hear me. So it's just a matter of making sure that you encourage your students in the class to make sure that they're speaking clearly and with a strong voice. Assessments, how do they work? Do we do them in HyFlex? Yes, we do. We have assessments in our HyFlex classes. They work in a very similar way to assignments. Basically, just making sure that you have a paper copy for your students in the class, and then a digital copy for the online students. I tend to email out my assessments. So if we were to start the assessment now, I would hand out the paper copies, and then I would email the digital version to my online students. And then just monitoring them as they're doing the assessments. Because I'm in the class, it's very easy to monitor my in-person students. So my focus is really making sure that the online students have their video webcams on, and just making sure that everyone's working away on the test. Sometimes I'll have them kind of show me, making sure that they're alone in the room. So there's a few steps or protocols I follow just to make sure that I can be confident that the students' work is valid. And there have been challenges, I will admit, in terms of students copying each other's work, getting inappropriate help, but we do have some things that minimize that. I can't say it's perfect, but I think we've learned a lot of ways of how to deal with making sure the students' work is valid. We now have a laptop lending library. So basically any student that doesn't have like a tablet or a laptop or a computer of some kind, if they only have a phone, then we require them to come and borrow a laptop from the school. The problem with the phone is that it turns off when you're opening up documents. And so it's just really impossible to see the student at all times if they're doing the assessment on their phones. So that's gone actually very well. I don't think there are any students at this point that only have a phone. So that's been a success for us. And then there have been times where teachers require their classes to come and take their assessments at the school. Again, just as a way of ensuring that they know and they're confident that they're seeing the students' work and it's valid. And of course, if there's health concerns with a student coming to the school, they don't absolutely have to come. And so we have accommodated those special cases where a student just can't come. Maybe it's a health concern or whatever it may be. But generally, yeah, we have implemented that practice of having assessments at the school. Some challenges that we have faced. Of course, the technological challenges. I mean, there were some glitches in the beginning that we had to sort out, but things run pretty much smoothly now. I guess the challenge in the beginning was some of the audio, just making sure that your microphone is connected to the right audio setting, making sure the smart board is functioning well. And there was some difficulty in the beginning with online students just hearing things in the class. But like I said, making sure the mic is a good mic, making sure students speak loudly or clearly, that will help a lot. Another challenge is having the students online connecting with the in-person students. So if you can find creative ways of doing that, I think that would be very helpful. I certainly do my best to make that happen. So, you know, whether it be just at the beginning of class, and I like to show my students who's in the class, like, okay, tonight we have Jessica and John, and it's great to have them here. And then they'll say, oh, hi, and they'll kind of talk back and forth a bit. I think even just something like that is great, just so they feel connected with the other part of their class that they may, you know, that the other part of the class online versus in person. So of course, it's not recommended to, if you're doing like a speaking activity, you don't want to really mix an in-person student with an online student. I could try that, but it would be awkward unless they were presenting in front of the class as a role play or something. So generally we would have breakout rooms for the online students, and then the in-person students would practice together. In terms of class size, it's, I mean, it kind of depends, but I would say you would want at least 2 students in person, just because if you are doing like a speaking activity, then it allows you to have this 2 students work together. And then you have to look at the workload on the teacher. So generally our class sizes are about 12 to 14, but they do fluctuate. Workload prep time, I guess I kind of covered that already. COVID-19 self-assessments. So we do have those for anyone coming into the school, and we follow all the protocols that are recommended. I talked about the portfolios already. Front end staff involvement. This is for teachers that teach online and aren't able to come to the school, so they would have to have the front end staff print off their documents for their in-person students. And this may apply to you at your schools. For example, I was sick one day. I teach here at the school, but there was a day I had some COVID-19 symptoms and I wasn't sure. So I decided to stay home. And so I needed to find a way to have my paper copies distributed to my students that were in person at the school. Of course, classroom management, just again, going back to that self-awareness that you need as a teacher. And I did touch on this already before too, but some students may feel neglected if you're not balancing the time appropriately between online versus in person. The benefits, it's great to have that flexibility for students where they feel the freedom to learn in the way that is best for them. And they've expressed that, some of them love to learn in person. Some of them, a lot of them have actually adapted to online learning and have grown to like it. And so it really does depend on the student and the person, but it's great to have that flexibility. Some students, they'll do both. Sometimes they're at the school, sometimes they're online, and it kind of gives them, different angles to attack their studies. The lesson prep time, as I said before, does become instinctive and routine. Class notes and documents. I like to make class notes as we're going through the class, and as points come up, if there's vocabulary that we've gone over, questions that have been asked and answered, I do my best to make good class notes, and it's just like a Microsoft Word document. And then I send that to everybody through email. And that way, in-person students that maybe didn't capture all the notes that I wanted them to, or students that missed the class, they can see what we covered. And I've really liked that as a routine as a teacher. I have found that in the past, when it was only in person, I really had to check my students' notes because I found that they were really struggling to, at times, some of them were struggling to sort of dictate or record the notes in the way that I had wanted them to. For example, if I made a heading and then I had some bullet points beneath, they wouldn't use the bullet points, or they'd have sentences out of order, and it would change the meaning of what I was presenting in my notes. And so I still have my students take notes. I think it is a good skill for them to develop, but I think it's great to have a sort of reinforcement of the notes that I went over in class. And that's done through my emailing out of the class notes. And HyFlex classes, we definitely plan to continue those after the COVID-19 restrictions are gone, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later. And that is my presentation. So I did my best to cover the questions that were sent. I don't know if we want to do questions now or later. Or...
Yeah, we do have 5 minutes for ones that were submitted during your presentation. And if we don't get to all of these, everyone, don't worry, there's a longer Q&A session at the end too, but just wanted to get a couple things while they're fresh. The first one in the chat was, why was HyFlex being utilized first for literacy learners? Was there any reason why you were prioritizing literacy learners first?
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure that the literacy students had the in-person element, because what we found, and we did survey our students as well, so we didn't just assume that they wanted in person, but we did ask our classes. And at least with our school, our literacy students, I would say close to 90% of the class studied in person. And so with the switch to online, we knew that we switched to online, we surveyed our class, and then 90% of them were attending in today, because we knew if we were to change that, a lot of them would not be happy. So yeah, it was based on their preference, but also we felt that literacy learners generally need a little more support in person. So that's why we prioritize them in the HyFlex program.
Awesome, thank you. The next question was, how much more prep time do you think teachers required to balance the two streams of work there?
Yeah, good question. I would say in the beginning it was more, but so if I talk about how it was for me in the beginning, it was I wouldn't say double the prep time. I would say a third of the prep time more, if that makes sense. But now I would say it's like, it's not the same, but it's almost the same as an in-person class. It's very close to my usual prep time now that I'm established and my materials are digital and physical, and I know where they are. So in the beginning, it was about a third of the prep time more that I had to do, and now it's just a little bit more.
Awesome, thank you. The next question was, do teachers maintain their own e-portfolios, or are the students able to put documents in the e-portfolios in Avenue? Is it more of a teacher responsibility for admin, or can the students manage that on their own?
Yeah, so at this point, it is the teacher's responsibility. The students are able to view their e-portfolios on Avenue, but they are not able to, at least at this point in time, we're just having the teachers upload those documents. We do have the admin team helping our teachers with that though. So for example, with the HyFlex teachers, when they do assessments and they've marked them, the paper copies, then they give them to the admin team and they scan them into the, they scan them and email them off to the teachers. So it does save some time and some burden on the teachers by having the admin team help out with that. So we do our best to make sure that workload is minimal as possible. But yeah, at this point in time, our teachers are maintaining the e-portfolios.
Awesome. And I'm going to jump just to one question that lends into that. Is there a position, something like a digital navigator, someone who can, whose position it is to help students get online or to train digital literacy in that? Or is it something that the admin team and the teachers are just taking up together?
Actually, yeah, great question. We do have someone now that is a dedicated IT support person. And so yeah, their job would be to help out with any challenges that students are having connecting to their class, or most recently with our laptop lending library, some students are having difficulty with their laptops. You know, they're claiming that it doesn't work, or they're not able to use it in some way. So we do have our IT support guy now that can help students or teachers with individual IT concerns. Before we had this position, this person as the IT support, it was our admin team. So they would help individual students. So we have both now.
Awesome, thank you. The next question was, how do you manage to do speaking assessments when some students are online and some are in person, or even practice? Is it something you can juggle at the same time, or?
Yeah, for speaking assessments or practicing, I've done those. So what I've done is I would have, so if it was an assessment, I would have my class working on something. Maybe they'd be practicing like some kind of speaking exercise in breakout rooms, or maybe it's something they can work on individually. And then one by one, I would take a student into a breakout room and I would do their assessment. Now, because I want the assessment to be private, I don't do the assessment when I'm sitting in the classroom. So I fortunately have the option of going into a separate room, joining the class in a separate room, and then I can have my student join a breakout room with me and we do the assessment, and then I can come back to the class. And for my in-person students, you know, I would just find a private space where I can do that with them. So maybe out in the hallway or something. We have a lot of options here at the school where we can take a student that's here at the school and take them into a private, not a, like, you know, just a separate area from the class where I can do the assessment. So yeah, the key there is just making sure that when you're doing the online assessments with your online students, that you're not doing it in the classroom where in-person students can hear the conversation. And then in terms of assignments, I mean, that's a lot more flexible, but I guess it's similar too. So I would have the in-person students working together, and then all my Zoom students would be in breakout rooms. So there wouldn't be an audio crossover because they're in a breakout room. They can't really hear the classroom. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. That is the end of our time for the first presentation. I know we didn't get to all of the questions so far, but I am keeping a record and I'll make sure to bring them up again at the final Q&A session as well. So thank you so much, Justin, for your time. That was a really great presentation. I really enjoyed the pictures and seeing how it all looks. I have a hard time picturing it sometimes. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Our next presenter is from TIES. So just, I believe you already have the control there.
Yeah, I believe I do too. So I'm going to actually be presenting with Jana, Daniel. So the two of us will do that if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right. So can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's cool.
Okay. All right. So hi, everybody. So my name is Carrie Howard, and I'm here with Jana Trubano, and we work at TIES. So we're also doing a hybrid or HyFlex or whatever we want to call it system as well. So we also haven't changed the name yet, but definitely on the same page as Justin with discovering this new terminology. So Shauna's going to start us off here. Oh, no, I think I am, right? Me. Sorry. So today's agenda. All right. So we're going to go through kind of what we do at TIES in terms of hybrid delivery, the rationale for why we decided to do so, what kind of equipment we use, our delivery platforms, some feedback from instructors and clients, as well as some other answers to the questions that were provided today.
Okay. And so we started piloting hybrid back in April, and it was a program which we kind of was born out of a pandemic. When we approached IRCC, we definitely didn't approach and ask for 8, full-time and part-time classes. We started smaller, but kind of they increased. So we have been piloting it in CLB classes and literacy as well. And it was a need because of the health restrictions and always being kind of on site, online, back on site. So we needed a solution. So it wasn't a luxury, but it was more of a need that we needed to address. And as you all know, we are also funded by IRCC, and IRCC has been very supportive with our pilot project. So why did we want to do this? It's because we wanted to include everyone, wanted to be inclusive. So Justin mentioned already the literacy learners, and specifically the literacy foundation students are struggling a lot when it comes to being online. So we wanted, and those students were kind of lost. So, they didn't, because they were waiting for us to open on site, and we would open for a month, we'd bring them, and then we had to send them home. So we thought, okay, what can we do to address their needs? So this is why we came up with this solution and of course, inspired by our colleagues in the sector, Maple Leaf and SIWA, because they were, I think, the first ones that were braver than us and started this. So we thought, okay, we will do this. And aside from this, we had learners who can't come on site because they have a compromised immune system. So those were always online. So it was a system that served both clients, both groups of clients. And plus it was really convenient because once, Alberta Health Services send us home. So the clients who were on site, they already had some digital literacy skills. They were able to use, at least open Zoom, share the screen, mute themselves, skills they didn't have before. Aside from this, we find it's an innovative program, in an innovative way of delivery, we believe. Okay.
So of course, there were some purchases that needed to be made. So we also have purchased some cameras. So as you can see circled up there, there's a camera that we're using. I'll go into more detail about what it is later. We had to increase the speed of our internet, at least on one of our sites, to accommodate the load on the connection there. We already had 9 smart boards at our facilities, which was great. So we were able to use those. We would recommend a high spec CPU attached to those though, which we do not have right now. We have the one that it came with about 5 years ago. So we're looking at improving those right now. But yeah, if you're just starting out and you're at the purchasing stage, make sure that those have, definitely enough RAM to be able to handle a lot of things going on at once on those boards. So a high quality camera with a high quality mic for sure. We're using Zoom for Education, and so that's working really well with those cameras and the smart boards. And also it's great to have an additional laptop for the instructor. So when you want to do things like speaking assessments in different separate rooms, or you just want to have an alternate view of the class for the learners online, to be able to maybe face-to-face with yourself or with another learner at times. So it's great to have that option if it's available. So for the camera, originally we opted to place the camera at the back of the room. That was done based on just a little focus group that we had before we started, and we all kind of agreed with instructors included that that would be the best option. But as soon as we put it there, we realized that we wanted to move it to the front, as it was quite awkward for the instructor having it at the back, and it was really, really far away as well. So we did move that to the front of the room. The camera that we have comes with a remote, so you can kind of zoom all over the room if you want to. You can zoom out, you can have presets. So if you have if the instructor has a space where they sit, sometimes they could preset it to zoom to that space, or preset to zoom out to the whole room. And yeah, like I said, you can kind of navigate that that zoom all over the room if you wanted particular students highlighted on camera and whatnot. So that is a Logitech Meetup video conferencing camera. Yeah, so I already talked about the placement of the camera. Of course, we have to observe social distancing. So we have a couple of different setups to the rooms. So as you can see, some tables are kind of spread out. Some are still in the U shape, but skipping tables. So maybe one person at every other table. So we always make sure to observe social distancing with masks. Masks are worn in class for, I would say, 98% of the time. The odd time you may see a student kind of remove it momentarily, maybe to take a sip of water or whatever, but even though they are socially distanced, I think most people are more comfortable with that. So that's kind of what's happening. But they do take some mask breaks, but I think we're all pretty used to masks at this point. So it's become less of an issue and an ask for students to be removing them. So for the most part, masks are on at all times. Yeah, and the configuration of the room, like I said, is based on the class size. So for the literacy classes, there's less learners than the CLB classes, but it really depends on the class. We have some classes that we can't keep the students out of the building, and we have some where it's a little more challenging to have students come in. So yeah, whichever scenario we have kind of dictates how the classroom is set up. So it varies.
So for both groups of clients, we use the Google Classroom. So the teacher who teaches the hybrid class the night before, whenever they get ready for class, they will go to their Google Classroom and post the material for the class. So now the ones who are on site, so the teacher, like Justin mentioned as well, we do the same thing. So they will have to photocopy and get ready for the class. They will make their handouts. But the ones who are online, so they will have the same material posted on the Google Classroom. And the students on site, they have their actual PBLA binders, while the ones online will have a virtual PBLA language companion, which is placed on the Google Classroom. So if you look at the slide here, you can see that we have different, for assessments, we use Google Forms. So the students who are on site, so what the teachers, some of the teachers, what they will do, they will print the Google Forms and share with their students. Others will modify and have different looking assessments. For the online ones, so the students who are online, they will use only the Google Forms, and you see they're all color coordinated. They match the CLB book. So writing is orange, reading is green, and etc. So when that's what's mainly happening in terms of how the things are done. So two groups, they will have two different assessments, or two different, will have access to the on-site ones, will have access to actual or hard copies, while the online ones will do it online. And here, if you can go to the next one.
And I'll just add one thing there, that a couple of our instructors actually have clients in the room that have devices, and they're a little bit of a higher level. So those students are doing the Google Forms as well, just at their seats using their own devices.
Thank you. And for the Literacy Foundation, our lovely Donna Clark, who some of you might know, so she has put together with her team, they have put together packages that we have sent students home. There were a few questions in the chat, I think, addressed to Justin about the literacy, how are the literacy clients doing it. So we find a bit challenging for them to be online and not to have anything tangible, so they function better when they have something to relate to, or something to go to, something to hold in their hands, to color, to flip. So that's why we've been delivering these packages. Some of them come to the building and pick them up. Others, like we've had nice instructors who have been even driving to their places and dropping off, but majority of the students come and pick up the packages. We've done this merely for the Literacy Foundation. I'm just because this is the most challenging level, and those of you who are in literacy, they know that that's absolutely necessary to have some kind of support. Okay, thank you, Kerry. So for how do we do assessments? So clients, like I said, we have two methods. So we have the digital assessments and we have the paper assessments. And Kerry already added that some of the on-site ones that are higher level, because we have hybrid we're piloting in 3 and 4 as well. So the CLB 3-4 clients, they manage the devices better than, of course, a Literacy Foundation client, and those can even do it on their phones. It was mentioned by Justin, I think, today, that it's really nice to be in a computer lab, but we don't always have that luxury. If we were in a computer lab, I guess students who don't have, phones, or they want to see a bigger screen, they could use, a computer. Okay.
Yeah, and we do have that situation. So if possible, they are in computer labs sometimes. Okay, so we have a couple of videos now. So I'm hoping that this is going to play through here. I might actually just share my screen one more time, because I don't think that I pressed the share your computer audio. So we took a video for the instructors as well as the students about the feedback on this system. So I'll play that for you now.
Please, okay.
Yeah.
We don't see the full screen, Kerry.
No?
Just if you're okay with that, that's fine. But
You see the full screen for the slide though, right?
we kind of see a bigger slide and a smaller slide on the side.
Oh.
I guess in terms of challenges, at the beginning, it was a little bit different, like the interaction, because, instead of seeing just my face at home, the online students would see the classroom, whole classroom, and sometimes it felt like I wasn't really talking to them, talking to the people in the classroom. So sometimes I would have to focus the camera just on me instead of everyone in the class. But at other times, I would let them see their classmates so that they can interact with them too.
I think the overall general challenge is that obviously you're teaching in 2 different formats, trying to find the best of both worlds.
I think, for low level, the biggest challenge is the technical part.
Obviously, when students...
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there.
Obviously, when students are in the physical class, it's great, but sometimes they might have appointments, so they might not be able to come because of their husband or wife can't give them a ride. So students have gone to an appointment and then gone straight home and joined class that way.
And the second one is inclusion. So we include different levels, different situation or family situation students, and we don't exclude those moms with little babies. If they feel they're ready to join the class and they want to improve their English, they're always welcome.
I think one of the advantages that the online students can interact with the on-site students in some way. It's very different from online student interacting with online students?
Some of the benefits to hybrid, I would say, is mostly about that flexibility. So especially for the students, it's, you know, if they have an appointment, something's going on at home, they have some challenges, some problems, they're able to attend that class and not just not come, they can go online. And then I have also a few around two students who like to take advantage of being both in the building a couple of days a week and a couple of days online.
I would definitely recommend using hybrid with those students who can learn individually, those who have some basic computer skills. And of course, it's a very good option for those who really want to study, but because of some reasons, they're unable to attend in person.
I would recommend hybrid because I love being in the building and I love seeing my students as many as I can, even if it's once a week. I get to see them. That's amazing. And it makes me happy that at least they have the flexibility to attend on-site or online.
Both teachers and administrators should keep in mind that hybrid is not just putting some students in the classroom and some online. We have to kind of adjust our activities, our teaching methods a little bit so that we are not ignoring any one of the two groups. Yeah, and sometimes I feel it does take a little bit longer, but I think it's worth it.
The one thing I think it's important to keep in mind, especially when you're teaching hybrid, and this applies to online as well, but when you're teaching hybrid to lower level literacy learners, is that we have to be very patient with the learners and with ourselves. We might have been very, very comfortable in our environment and felt really, really empowered and very secure in our abilities when teaching learners in a physical classroom. And then we got thrown online, and that completely changed things, and we had to go through that transitionary growth and development in order to kind of adapt to that format. And then you have to do that again when you go to hybrid, because they're all different. So I think it's important to remember that not everything will go perfect all the time, similar to an online class, and you have to be kind to yourself and patient with the learners.
I've noticed that it boosted their digital literacy skills development. So my students that are in person, they feel pretty reluctant about using a laptop or using some online tools like Zoom, Google browsing, emails, surveys, Google Forms, you name it, right? That's why they want to come to class and have a traditional teacher, paper, pencil activity. So because we are hybrid right now, and they can choose to stay home if they're not able to attend on this day. So they have to try it out. They have to develop their digital literacy skills. And I'm very happy that they're put in such a situation where they keep exploring what is available to language learners of the 21st century now.
Okay. I'm just going to try and share my screen again. I'm not sure why it's showing this strange way to you all. That was just a video showing our
Just the video.
instructors.
Mhm.
And now, let's see. What do you see now? Is that better?
Full screen, yes.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
My name is Ali. I'm from Syria. I came to Canada 1 year and 8 months ago. I like school. I go to school.
Right. But today you are online. Why?
Today online, my children, we go to park, Zakaria and Hassan. I eat breakfast. I help my wife.
Ah, okay. And do you have some appointments today?
Yes, I have appointment 12 o'clock. My wife, I have appointment 1:30. My son go to school. No, like online.
But right now you're online, Ali.
Yes, and today I am very busy.
The class I'm in is, my teacher says 1 and 2. That the class I'm in right now.
Okay, good. And Abiyat, do some of the students go to school online and some in the class?
Yes.
Yes.
Including me. I have 2 weeks right now in the building in school, but before I'm in online. I do online.
Okay. Now, why do you do sometimes online and sometimes in the class?
And because if someone is missing in that day, my teacher let me know to come to the class.
What about when you're online? Abiyat, do you talk to the people in the classroom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Together.
Do you understand everything when you're online?
Yes, I understand some, not too much, but I understand some question and some word the people say. And sometimes it's difficult, you know, you are by yourself online. Sometimes it's difficult.
Sometimes it's difficult. Yeah. And did your teacher give you any papers when you're at home, studying at home?
Yes, I came here to pick up my paper and take it back home.
Okay, what things did your teacher give you?
They give me they give me binder and paper and the yellow book and the red book and the card, the marker and pencil and the container, all of them in container.
Okay, so that was just a little look at some feedback from our students and instructors. So one of the questions that you all had for us today was surrounding best practices. So we just tried to list off as many as we could. So the physical positioning of the instructor in the room is really important so that you are not isolating one group or another. So to try and stay within that kind of centralized area between the display for the in-person students and the camera for the online students. Definitely make an investment in some high spec equipment if you can. Offer flexibility. So if a learner can come sometimes, can't come other times, so maybe come up with a schedule, maybe a Monday, Wednesdays, this group comes in, Tuesday, Thursdays, this group comes in. So every group is different, so you'll have to accommodate accordingly. I would say to utilize online assessments for both groups if possible, of course, for Literacy Foundation classes and lower level, maybe level 1, it's going to be challenging, but if especially if they've had experience online already doing online assessments, it's great to do them online when they're in the building as well, so that instructors are not having to make different versions of things just to cut down on that additional work. Have at least one day of online per week if you can. So for our full-time delivery, we do Fridays online, Monday to Thursdays in person and online. So even those that come on site do Fridays online to maintain their digital literacy skills. Take advantage of all of those ready-made modules that the CCLB has produced and that other SPOs have made through funding grants or however they were made. But definitely, if you can use them, use them. Why would you spend all that time planning a module when there's already a great one done? You can focus more on, learning the procedures for this type of delivery. Have laptops available for instructors so that they can have another view of the class. And as mentioned, it's great to have a dedicated staff member for digital support. So whether or not they're doing that in person or online, but to have someone available to help students with their needs. So how do we ensure that people come on site was another question that was asked. I think that this is all about how you sell it. So if you make it worthwhile, if you believe in the process, if you follow up on the decisions that you make, if you rotate the learners, if you highlight the benefits and are understanding of those who maybe can't participate, I think that's really important. As you all know, when you try and approach something, you ask somebody to do something and you're asking them and apologizing for asking at the same time. Sometimes people are not as willing or happy to do it, but what we have found, because we do have 8 classes, so what we found is those instructors that enjoy it more tend to have more engagement from the learners as well, whereas those instructors that are kind of unsure, not overly into it, don't have as high digital literacy skills, for example, we find that those classes generally have lower engagement and students need more convincing to come on site. So definitely the instructor choice is a big consideration here as well.
So another question was, how do we keep learners engaged? So of course, make sure that they are all working on the same task. And don't forget that you have, sometimes, even the hybrid instructors have been mentioning that sometimes they are so much engaged with the people on site that they forget that they have people online. So it's always, you always have to be aware how you are standing and make sure that you always face both groups and always maybe ask one student on site and then the next question can be addressed to the ones online. Then they will stay tuned and they will know, okay, so the teacher will ask me a question so I don't have to run to the kitchen and start cooking something. So they will be focused on what the teacher is doing. Try not to separate learners, so treat them all equally. Doesn't matter whether you're on site or online, you are the same and share the same love, same time for both groups. And allow for flexibility in the mode of learning. Make sure you develop personal relationship between students and instructors. So that's very important. Kerry was just mentioning that, students, if, the students, I always say that the students don't come to Kerry or Jana, they come to the teacher. So the love for the subject goes to the love, through the love for the teacher. So the teacher is engaging, fun, caring. So they will have a lot of participation. They will have a lot of students coming in. So developing trust, developing a relationship with both groups of learners, I think it's absolutely important. And, try to provide as much support to both groups and provide equal materials. This is why we give access to both groups to the Google Classroom, so they don't feel they're left behind. And like Kerry already mentioned, on Fridays we go online. So when they are online, they go to the Google Classroom so they can go and check what the teacher has posted. And we also have lots of other things that we post to the Google Classroom. So we try to teach them to use the Google Classroom the same way they would use their actual classroom. Okay. Gary?
So there are some questions that we have no answers for. So how much more prep work is required? I think this is instructor dependent. I think it's also program dependent. Depends on what platforms you're using. So I know I watched at a TESOL last week or the week before, whenever that was, Avenue and this auto-populating e-portfolio. So I mean, if you're using that versus if you're using Google Classroom. So it really depends. We've surveyed our instructors a few times over the pandemic, and we've gotten a very, very different range of answers for how much additional prep people are doing. So we can't really answer that one. Apologies. Same thing here. How much extra work? It's all relative to what people want to do. Some people go above and beyond and do things that they're not asked to do, which is fantastic, but that's extra work that they haven't been asked by us to do, right? So again, it varies. How successful are these classrooms in comparison to face-to-face scenarios? It's really hard to tell right now. So it's just a system that hasn't been in place for long enough, I think, to answer that question with any certainty. But hopefully there'll be some research done on this kind of mode of delivery and we can all find out together.
And I think the students enjoy having the flexibility. I think that's very important.
For sure.
Both students and teachers, I should say, because we had a kid when a teacher had flu-like symptoms and she had to go online and teach the group. So I think that's very nice to have that flexibility.
Yeah, and also we have to, be really sure about what success is, how we're defining a successful class, right? So yeah, the hard to answer that one as well. Do students only online learn at a different pace than those who get a mix of both online and in class? Also very hard to say at this time. I mean, I would assume that the pace of learning is faster when they're being given the opportunity to come in person, but I can't say for sure. There's no statistical data on that as of yet. Should there be a mandatory number of in-class hours for all students? We're kind of thinking about this right now, but when you do have a pandemic in place, it's hard to have a mandatory anything. But maybe, in a couple of years down the road when we're not in the boat that we're all in right now, and we do keep these hybrid classes going, maybe at that point we can have some sort of a system of mandatory hours. But for right now, don't feel that we're able to do that. Should schools offer 3 modes of deliveries? Is it even possible? Don't know. So everybody's just trying all this stuff out. So nobody thought it was possible to put all these classes online a year and a half ago. So I guess anything's possible now. But I guess it all depends on the SPO and what staff availability they have for supports and things like that. So,
and I think for as administrators, I think it would be nice for us to have 3 modes of delivery because, the more variety you offer, the more clients you can attract. But that there is a cost associated with every single mode of delivery. So I guess it all depends also on our funders, what they would like to invest and what would they like to invest in. So we'll have to wait and see.
Right. Yeah. So I mean that's it. So any questions, you're always free to email Jeanna or myself. I'll stop sharing now. And I apologize, Daniel, if we went over a little bit. I really have no idea where we are for time.
Oh, that was almost perfect. So thank you so much.
Okay.
We did get some questions in the chat. There's one that we didn't get to from the last presentation. How do you help learners on their writing and give writing support when some are in person and some are doing it digitally?
It's a good question. So one of our instructors did a talk at ATESL about this as well. So writing has been a tough one. But the online learners, for sure, they have the ability to write on paper if they want to, send in pictures, or I heard yesterday a good strategy is to ask them to put it on their nose. So put the paper on their nose so that the teacher can take a screenshot. Or I really think it's class dependent. It's really hard to answer specifically because we have, literacy foundation classes, we have CLB 3-4 classes. So it really, really depends on who you're dealing with and what digital literacy skills they have. But for sure, they're able to use a pen and pencil if they want to in either mode of delivery if they're not able to type.
Oh, yeah. The higher level students, they tend to type more, I found, like when we were observing the classes. But low levels, like Kerry said, they tend to write in their notebooks and then they, show to the teacher. Teachers takes, pictures. Or WhatsApp is quite popular too. Now everybody seems to, operate WhatsApp like there is no tomorrow. So they will take a picture and send it, to the teacher. So of the writing. So that's what's been practiced, what they have been practicing.
Thank you. The next one, I know Alyssa wrote in the chat an answer to this, but I can say again too, but how does your camera pick up what's on the smartboard? Alyssa mentioned that they're sharing through Zoom screens, but there's a bit of confusion of how people at home can see what's on the board.
Yeah, so same for us. So they're sharing the Zoom screen. What we've advised our instructors to do, and not everybody follows this, but what I think is the most efficient way to do it is to separate your screen a couple of ways. So you have your Zoom over here so everybody can still see the windows, and then you have your screen share over here. And then whatever you're using, your whiteboard or whatever, your Google Classroom. So the students in the building are looking at the exact same thing that the students at home can see. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And Justin, feel free to jump in as well if you have any answer to these questions. No worries at all. Do students keep both, for your program specifically, do students keep both physical binders and e-portfolios, or are they only doing e-portfolios? Or only physical binders?
The ones online don't have a e-portfolio, like an actual binder, but the ones on site, they do have an actual binder. So we don't make them do both. Specifically for lower students, that would be, oh my goodness, that would be over their heads. So we try to kind of keep one. I don't know, Carrie, if you want to.
And like at Maple Leaf as well, Justin mentioned that the instructors were doing a lot of the populating of those e-portfolios. So this is the same with us. So for the lower level clients, they're not expected to be able to put those into our version of an e-portfolio. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. This is for your program and Maple Leaf. Are students free to choose their modality, like day by day, week by week, session by session? How flexible is HyFlex?
Flexible for us, right? So we have been trying to accommodate because we are in a pandemic. So like Carrie and I, we have been very supportive to what the students' needs. So you heard Ali speaking in the video. So like I see Ali every morning, and then one morning I don't see him, so he's online. So we've been accommodating their needs as much as we can. We don't have a policy like you have to come, 3 days on site, 3 days online. We haven't had that.
Yeah.
We haven't even had a chance to think about this. Like things are going so fast that we technically have no time.
Yeah, so right now there's only a couple of classes where more than the physical space allows of clients want to come on site. So it's one of the challenges is that we didn't put in is getting students to come, right? So like Justin said, a lot of students are used to online now. It's become more convenient, and yeah, so it's hard. Every class is a different story.
Too many showing up for in person. Like, I guess I'm not sure where to put you.
Those couple of classes that have more, they just schedule it. So Monday, Wednesday you come, Tuesday, Thursday you come. But yeah, for the most part, we don't have to do that yet. But Justin, you go ahead as well.
Yeah, as I was kind of alluding to that. Basically, the way it works at our school is I have extra copies because, yeah, I don't know on a given day who's going to be in the class and who's not. However, there are seat assignments. And so we kind of look at a first come, first serve basis. So if there's 10 seats in the class and 10 students come the first day, then they kind of get that seat for the semester. And then it would, if there's other students that still want to come, we wouldn't be able to accommodate them. We haven't had that situation. I suppose that what Carrie and Jana said is a good idea, which is if you do have a lot of students, more than you are able to accommodate in person, then having a schedule, I think would be a great idea. Maybe you come Tuesday, Thursday, the other group comes Monday, Wednesday. But currently we don't have that issue. We don't have more students coming than we're able to accommodate. We are sometimes close to the capacity, but we have it highly flexible, HyFlex. So students are able to come whenever.
Yeah, and for us, our rooms are not very big, so we can only fit 6. So it doesn't really matter how many people are in the class total. In the building, we can only fit 6. So the remaining balance is online. And it's only those couple of classes that there's maybe 8 that want to come, but yeah, we haven't had to deal with that so much. So.
And I see Alyssa, your hand's up, so go ahead.
We did have a situation where the one class we had the students scheduled to come in, and then we had additional students show up. And so what we ended up doing is putting the additional students into the computer lab and reminding them that your turn is next week. We did it week on, week off rather than that. But as the HyFlex classroom progressed, we found that, as Justin mentioned, students were finding, oh, weather's changing, it's raining today, they would start going online more. So that situation only happened a few times for us.
Sure, thank you. Irma, I see your hand is up as well.
Just need to, there are my controls. You are using, Carrie, you are using Google Classroom. When do you plan to switch to Avenue?
That's a great question that we ask ourselves often. I don't know. So, I mean, we're still kind of learning about Avenue. The last presentation I went to Avenue maybe 4 or 5 months ago, though, I didn't see anything with an e-portfolio. Now, last week, I see this hugely developed e-portfolio, and I didn't see any like news brief about that. So that was just news to us last week that this is there, and that looked great. Also, there was a presentation about Google Classroom versus Avenue, which was really eye-opening as well. So I don't know. We're still kind of thinking about that.
I also, Irma, if I can speak from the, as an administrator, it's we have never been offered to use Avenue, and we haven't been requested to switch to Avenue. And I don't even know when the training took place because nobody notified us.
Well, you just, yeah, I mean, if we want it, we can email and ask, but yeah, I mean, it hasn't been a formal, our officer hasn't said, when are you guys going to do Avenue? So, right, no one's told us basically to switch.
And we asked the officer, we asked our IRCC officer, is that mandatory? Is that a mandatory platform? Do we have necessarily to switch? And she says, absolutely. She said, absolutely no requirement from IRCC. So that's why we haven't even considered it. But maybe in the future we will. Carrie and I have been going to lots of presentations on Avenue, so we'll see. If it's easy, why not? We want something easy. Easy for everybody, for teachers, for us, for our coordinators, and for the students as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to a question that was similar to how flexible is flexible. For assessments, do students have to pre-declare how they're going to do their assessment so that teachers can plan, or is it still quite day-to-day for assessment days?
I mean, for us at Maple Leaf Academy, it's it's similar to how just a regular class would work. So it's flexible, so students can do it online or in person. I personally haven't found any issues with that. I mean, if they come in person, I have extra copies and they get a paper copy, and I just give them the test. And I definitely prefer to mark it on paper as opposed to online. So in terms of workload, it is a little bit easier if they do come in person. But if they are online, then I just give the online version, and I haven't found any issue in terms of administering the test. Just the marking would be a little bit different.
Yeah, for us, assessments are done for both groups at the same time. So there's not really like a choice. It's wherever you are at that moment, that's how you're taking the assessment. So if you're home, you're taking it on the form. And if you're in person, you may also be taking it on the form, depends on the teacher, or you could be using a paper copy. So it really just depends on where you are when the assessment's given out. So it's all still real time.
Awesome, thank you. Next question, how long are your classes per day? Can teachers handle a 3-hour HyFlex block, or are they split up differently? Were any changes done there?
Ours there's no changes. So from the beginning of the pandemic, we've been in sync with our whatever hours we put into iCare. That's how long people are in class for. So yeah, there's no change. So full-time class is 5.5 hours Monday to Thursday, 3 hours on Fridays. The part-time are 3 hours a day Monday to Thursday. So no change.
And so HyFlex would be very little asynchronous work in your program, or?
Say that again, sorry?
So the hours would almost all be done live.
They've always, we haven't never done like, okay, our class is 3 hours, but we do an hour and a half, you do an hour and a half, whatever. We've always been asynchronous for the entire schedule of the class. Whatever's in iCare, people are being taught for that amount of time.
Awesome. And Justin for Maple Leaf.
Yeah, so yeah, all our classes are live, both in person and on Zoom. I mean, they do have homework or assignments they have to do on the online platforms, but in terms of class time, it's all synchronous, it's all live. And just to clarify something I saw earlier, the literacy class is, we don't have any strictly in-person classes, because we have found that even with a literacy class where all the students want to come to the school, even in those situations, we still find it beneficial to have a HyFlex program, because there are students that want to attend online on certain days. We saw that come up a lot, whether they were sick or had appointments or just couldn't make it to school that day.
Thank you. Last question we might have time for. How meaningful is the group work between the face-to-face and the at-home students? Are they able to collaborate together, or are they more separated between the two groups?
Our situation, I don't think we separate. And in one of the pictures, you could see a student coming to the board because he thought that his colleague couldn't hear him well. So we try to engage them equally. So for instance, if you're on site, you collaborate. I heard that Justin does it a little bit differently at Maple Leaf, and maybe we can try that as well. But for now, from what we've seen, is we always encourage not to have this, how can I say, this barrier that you are online and I'm at school. So we try to make them collaborate as much as possible. When I had to cover for Jeremy one day, so I tried to involve everybody. I mean, do one from online, one from on site, kind of rotate them. And for conversations, I also paired them in this way. So, okay, the one online is reading the question, the one on site is answering. But it's great what Justin was suggesting as well, like putting them in breakout rooms as well, could work as well.
Yeah, I think at our school, in terms of like online students interacting with in-person students, it's something that I'm currently looking at. How can I get more of that? I think that it really depends on the activity and what you're going over in the class. If it's something like a reading activity or something where you can involve multiple students, then yeah, it's great. But they're not really interacting with each other. They're kind of interacting as a group. I don't have a student online working with a student in person per se, but they do work together as one big group, where they're giving comments and they're reading sections from a reading or something like that. Where in that way they're working together as a group. But how meaningful is it? It could, I think there's room for improvement, but we do find ways to have them all interacting with each other.
Thank you, everyone. That is time, but I do see that Alyssa has her hand up for sure. And then we can see if we want to leave exactly at 2:30, if there's some room for a couple extra questions. But I'll jump to Alyssa first. She is a presenter, so.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that we do have a couple teachers, and not in the LINK program, but in another program, that they will use the tablets that we have on site and put on online student into a breakout room with an in-person student, and they can do group work that way, and then they rejoin the classroom and share what they worked on. So that is one way that we've encouraged the interaction between the online students and the in-person students.
Thanks so much, Alyssa. Would you guys have time for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Irma, go ahead. I see your hand up.
What ransom do you require for a copy of your inventory sheets in Google Forms?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
I say, I need a copy of your inventory sheets in Google Forms. What is the ransom price?
Okay. You can have a copy. There's no price. It's okay. We're all funded by the same people, so I don't think we can charge you.
Can you post your email, or can you just say your email address?
Yeah.
Share.
I'll put it in the chat for you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Okay, everyone, so that is our time for the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to all of our presenters, Justin, Carrie, Jana, and Alyssa. It was an amazing job. I feel so much more informed, and I look forward to sharing this with all of you as well. This presentation will be made available, I think, by the end of tomorrow. I'll be emailing it to, I'll be attaching it to the invite list and also putting it on the ASA website as well. Thank you again so much for coming, and thank you for all your expertise to our presenters.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Everyone.